Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofrumento, and I am so excited for all of you to meet an incredible entrepreneur because, to be honest with you, I don't know how this guy does all the things that he does, but we are certainly going to find out in today's episode because today's guest, let me tell you, he's not just an entrepreneur, he's also a consultant, he's also a professor, he's also an author, he's also an inventor, and he just so happens to also be a surgeon. So let me introduce you to today's guest and fellow entrepreneur. His name is Dr. Peter Bonutti. Dr. Bonutti is a surgeon, inventor, author, professor, consultant, and entrepreneur with over 30 years of experience. He's the founder of Bonutti Research, which is a medical device incubator that has developed products and technology used around the world, including a device that it is so cool. I'm so excited for us to talk to him about one of his flagship devices called UVCeed, which is a medical grade disinfecting device that works on your mobile phone. Wait until you hear about the way that this works, and it kills 99% of all germs. He maintains his clinical and surgical practice, focusing on adult knee and hip arthroplasty and integration of robotics into surgical procedures. This is somebody who we're actually catching him right in between his clinic day. So I'm really grateful for him joining us today. I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Dr. Peter Bonutti. All right, Dr. Peter, I am so very grateful that you're here with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks for having me.
Heck yes, I'm so excited to dig in. You heard in the teaser of this episode, I don't know how you fit everything in, so let's start with you personally. Take us beyond the bio. Who's Peter? How'd you start doing all these cool things?
I'm just a simple country guy. I sit there and say that I'm a hillbilly surgeon or a hillbilly entrepreneur, maybe. Live in a town of 13,000 people here called Effingham, Illinois, which is not necessarily the mecca for entrepreneurs, but it is a great little town to work out of. People have been very kind. I started practice here 37 years ago, and I've been in practice in Effingham since that time. So a long time, and I appreciate it. So anyway, that's sort of quick background, but I do design development technology, built a business incubator with mechanical, electrical, computer engineers that work for me here. We have a 40,000 square foot facility. So when I'm not operating and torturing people, I'm out working on new toys and new gadgets to help in the medical space.
I love that. As if you weren't busy enough, you also had to get into the invention space, the business space, all of these things. What did that transition look like? Because my sister's a veterinarian, so you two operate on very different types of patients, but nonetheless, I see how intensive and busy it is. Talk to us about that moment in time where you said, yeah, I want to do even more things. I want to give back to the world in even more ways.
Well, thanks. Historically, I have to go back a long way, but when I became a resident specializing in orthopedic surgery, I trained under one of the great inventors who's not very well known in medicine, a guy named Arthur Steffi. And I started with him my first year of residency, and he basically was a hand surgeon who, on his own practice, with his own time, his own costs, and his own efforts, started a company that was revolutionized spine surgery called interpedicular fixation, where he's used plates and screws to stabilize the spine. And I watched him build this up from something he had no expertise in to building screws and plates and rods, getting them disinfected, clearing through the FDA, and implant them in the patients. And he basically revolutionized the spinal surgery space and sold it as now DePuy Spine, which is where the technology has evolved into. And he's changed basically the work that every spine surgeon does in the world. While I was working, I ran his laboratory from mechanical testing, design, development. I realized that you can make a difference in medicine, but you have to take your time, your effort, your energy, your money to be able to take all these to the next level. That ideas themselves are not adequate, that you need to go to the next level, which is invest your time, money, effort to really push this. And so I started looking at medicine from the patient's perspective, and I noticed so many things that we could or should do better. I did fellowships all over the world in Australia, New Zealand, China, Japan, Austria, Yugoslavia. And as I did all these fellowships, Mayo Clinic, Cleveland Clinic, I learned a lot about how medicine is practiced. And I became also aware of how other surgeons, other physicians were practicing. And what I realized early in my career was that Much of medicine 35 to 40 years ago was focused on what was best for the doctor, the hospital, and not so much was focused on what patients cared about, what patients needed, what patients' expectations are, what patients wanted for results. And so I started to focus early on in my career listening to the patients, seeing what their problems were, and then try to develop technologies, ideas that would address what patients were concerned about the most. And that's how I focused my career. So the second episode was that my brother-in-law happened to be a patent attorney. He was just starting out of law school. And so he helped me navigate. So between learning from Art Steffi, and then I ended up, the last was being able to buy Art Steffi's research facility, which was in Cleveland. He was retiring. So I acquired the facility. I had a number of academic offers, and none of the universities would come up with the funds to take this because 40 years ago, research meant that you were doing, biologics, basic pharmacologics, and I wanted to do product development. So I bought this research facility. The only place that would help me, because I didn't have any funds back then, was this small town in Illinois where they countersigned my banknote and moved my facility. So I started practice here in small town Effingham, Illinois, and put 100% of any revenues I made of my practice into a research and development facility. And over the last 38 years, we have over 500 patents, over 700 licenses to different medical products, with a focus on looking at technology from the patient's perspective and optimizing care for the patient. And so UVCeed is a natural sequelae of that, because infection control is critical in surgery, especially in orthopedics, where infections are one of the greatest complications. And we looked at mechanisms that are simple, efficient, to help patients and help individuals prevent the risk of infection. And we designed this with a medical or surgical background. So I hope that's a quick overview, and happy to elucidate more if you would like.
Yeah, I'm really excited to go deeper there, because I feel like you're really peeling back the curtain for us, that us as just everyday people, as patients, as consumers, we take for granted a lot of these medical innovations. And so it takes innovators to push the envelope, which, let's face it, not everybody that we see, not every medical professional is doing that. A lot of them are doing what's tried and tested and what's important for us in that moment. But Dr. Peter, what I really appreciate about you, and I would argue entrepreneurs, is that we push the envelope. We stay one step ahead. And so whether we're talking about AI, right now, entrepreneurs are the innovators pushing the envelope forward with AI. Everybody else is going to catch up eventually. But when I look at the body of your work and what your research and development lab has put into the world, let's pick on UVCeed for a second, because this is a very cool wave of direct to consumer products that now all of a sudden I have a medical grade device on my iPhone that can disinfect my area. Introduce listeners to what UVCeed is, and especially that corner of the market that I think is so cool of direct to consumer.
Sure. The concepts, we started working on this from a medical and surgical perspective back in the mid 2012, 2013 timeframe. Ultraviolet C is known as a disinfectant system. And the beauty of ultraviolet C is that it has no chemicals, no major side effects, unless you point the light directly at yourself or another individual, where it can cause side effects, much like sunlight. For example, sunlight has UVC. About 10% of the sunlight that comes to the earth is in ultraviolet, and about 10% of that comes in the form of UVC. So it's kind of a natural disinfectant. What it does is it disrupts the DNA and RNA crosslinks. So any pathogen, whether it's a mold, a fungus, a virus, a bacteria, even parasites, all have DNA or RNA that they rely on for their reproduction and growth. And if you can disrupt that DNA or RNA, you sit there and stop the growth of these pathogens, germs as people commonly call them. And by doing that, you can sit there and disinfect in a safe, effective, almost natural fashion. What are the problems, though? The problems are, so you look at what's the efficacy: non-chemical, safe, no residue, environmentally safe, obviously comes from the sun. But the risks are, like sun, excess sunlight can give you sunburn. The same thing with UVC. So we said, look at how do we control the dosage so that you optimize the treatment but you don't overdose to hurt someone. And so we developed algorithms that we call dose control to sit there and turn on the light and turn off the light, looking specifically at the location. The second is, how do you know what you've treated? So for example, let's say you use a chemical wipe. Okay, let's say Lysol wipes. They say they disinfect 99.9% of the time, but I'll tell you that that's absolute fabrication. They're misleading consumers, and there's also danger. But when you take a Lysol wipe and you wipe a surface as an example, do you know what's been disinfected and what hasn't? You can't see it. You don't know. The second is that, did you know that you have to keep the surface continuously wet for 4 minutes with a Lysol wipe before it disinfects, and then it has to dry, which takes another minute. Did you know that 50% of the Lysol wipe dries within 60 seconds? So that means you have to wipe the surface 4 times, keep it continuously wet, and then it has to dry. And then you have to sit there and wipe it down with soap and water to remove the disinfectant agents because they're toxic to the body and they go across the blood-brain barrier. So nobody even thinks about this. It's all in the fine print. It's on the labels, but it's extremely dangerous unless people understand how to use it properly, or you have to wear gloves when you use it. So let's flip now back to UVC. I'm sorry I talked about some other technologies, but with UVC, it's a light source, so you can't see UVC. So we said we're going to create a camera system that allows you to see exactly what you're going to treat, and you'll know what is disinfected and what isn't, and you'll know the level of disinfection. So for example, to sanitize something, giving you what we call a 90% or log 1 reduction, it eliminates basically 90% of pathogens, but not all of them. Log 2 reduction gets you about 95. Log 3 reduction is about 99%, which is what you might see in a Lysol wipe, which takes, as I told you, nearly 5 minutes to do that. And what you will see is on the camera system, you see exactly what's treated, what level of disinfection, and can you get to even surgical disinfection, which is what we designed this technology for. So one is the security to know what you're treating and see what's been treated and see what hasn't been treated. And that's just as important. And the second is the safety factor. If you shine the light excessively, yes, you can damage eyes, you can get cataracts, you can cause skin cancers if you excessively treat. So we built into these algorithms through the cameras, through the sensor systems that we borrow from your phone and the computational analysis that allows us to sit there and take the phone as your computer so we can make a simple bolt-on that attaches with MagSafe or adhesive to your phone, and you can see what's treated, but you can also use those same camera systems for the safety factor. In other words, if my hand goes across the field, if a dog runs across, it automatically shuts off, recalculates the dose, and then tells you and restarts it so that you can get to the same level of disinfection. So we use the camera and sensor systems not just to ensure what you're treating and the level of your treatment, but also uses these AI algorithms to promote safety and security. So you could give this device to anyone, use it anytime, because safety and security are critical. Ultraviolet works, but it's dumb light. In other words, there's nothing smart about it. It's diffuse, it has advantages, but if you overtreat, you can damage surfaces. If you undertreat, you're not disinfecting, and you're not protecting anyone around. In this system, what we did is created a safe, simple, effective system that can be used anywhere, mobily, on the go, and also can follow up, and we're using this also for medical and surgical applications and developing this as well. We developed it initially for the coronavirus when COVID was rampant so that people could use this to treat the air, surfaces everywhere around them, decrease this viral load. And it also can be effective for any type of virus like neurovirus that you have on cruise ships. You hear all these cases, all the way down to treating staph, strep, methicillin-resistant bacteria, molds, fungi. And it's used ubiquitously in industry, but people don't even know about it because they don't see it's all behind the scenes. So big picture, I'm sure many people have the UVC systems in their HVAC system in their homes, but you need to have this portable around you to protect and for yourself and your family. So sorry I've talked a bit, but I hope that makes some sense.
No apologies needed, because I'll tell you this, as someone who is potentially slightly germophobic, anytime I'm on a plane, if I put my water bottle in the plane seat back pocket, I'm just like, oh, why did I do that? What am I going to do now? Am I even going to touch that water for the rest of this flight? But the truth is, having that ability, it's a layer of what you just shared with us that I really want to explicitly call out, which is the accessibility. That is so cool about the types of innovations innovations that are coming out of not only what you do, but obviously across the landscape, is more accessible solutions for us as everyday consumers. And I think that puts literally so much power into our pockets. But I've got to confess, Dr. Peter, that one thing you said perks my entrepreneurial ears up, which is the fact that when you talk about this product, so much of what you share about it comes with a layer of education. And I think that's very powerful in all of our businesses with all of our products or services, because education is what paves the way for us to show the use case, to show the why behind all of our products. And you brought up COVID-19, which is a very real thing that we all experienced in our lives. No matter who it is, no matter how much they wanted to ignore it, it impacted life in so many different ways. Looking forward with both your clinical hat on, but also your entrepreneurial hat on, I'm super curious where you see the market going, because there are certain things we're becoming more aware of societally. And so there's so much room for us to pay attention to new innovations, new products. What is it that you think is on that more macro societal landscape?
Well, one of the challenges that we have is many bacteria, viruses mutate, they change, they alter. Right now, we're on our 8th or 9th level of COVID virus mutations and changes that are affecting people. People can have multiple different forms of COVID, as an example, and get repeatedly reinfected with this because bacteria, viruses, fungi, molds, they're not static. They mutate, they migrate, and they will grow. And so what you want to be able to do is have a system that is developed that's resistant to this type of bacterial viral resistance that they're able to develop to normal chemical disinfectants, pharmacologic agents, other treatments. And UVC is that one universal system where there really is no great resistance by pathogens, germs, to ultraviolet C, because it goes down to its most core issue, which is reproduction. And if you destroy the DNA and RNA, they can't reproduce, they can't make proteins, so they basically will become non-functional and eventually die. So it is important. And what we see throughout society is that the more we try to treat these with chemical or with pharmacologic agents, the more resistance is developed, the more challenges we have. Well, methicillin-resistant staph is a great example. You can also talk about others. I won't get into some of the social diseases that we might see out there, but the resistance of bacteria and viruses is going to continue to evolve, and we need technologies that are with us, that are mobile, that are able to transform and change this and prevent these type of resistant bacteria and viruses from becoming a challenge or problem to us. So that's why this type of concept is so important, so critical. What people don't see is how ubiquitously it's used in industry behind the scenes. I just was in Washington Reagan Airport. I flew out there. Big sign says, hey, this area is being disinfected by UVC systems right out in the public area to protect people. And I don't think people even take a look and notice this. Or I saw some handrails at Fort Lauderdale Airport where these handrails are disinfected by UVC because so many people touch this. And almost every major industrial HVAC system or air conditioning, heating, they all use UVC to disinfect. They're out there protecting us by bringing these systems in. And what we need is technologies like this on a more granular level so people can take this and use them on their own when they travel, at home, in and around food preparations, cruise ships. I just can't believe these people are traveling on cruise ships. Every time you turn around, you'll see another norovirus, which causes severe diarrhea and complications on these trips. If they simply helped and reduced the germ load by using UVC systems in and around, for example, communal tables where people share food or they're accessing where you can't use chemicals or other disinfectants, you can use UVC around food to treat plates, foods themselves, and it offers you a unique opportunity to protect yourself and your family and reduce those risks by having something simple, mobile, and effective that travels with you. And again, it can be ubiquitous. So wherever you go, you have something that gives you an extra layer of protection that's a little bit different than traditional approaches. So something like this is going to be important. And as bacteria, viruses become more resistant, we're going to need novel techniques to protect you and to give you some security. And I believe this is one of the first products that's trying to look into these directions, that's environmentally safe, doesn't give off toxic chemicals, and is basically safe and effective with the technologies that we've developed with UVC.
Yeah, I think it's really incredible. And as someone who is a tech junkie, and obviously I love the business landscape and all the innovations, I feel like in past years, we've seen such a mass adoption of diagnostic tools. Like Apple Watch has now embedded blood oxygen and all of these things into just what we wear on our wrists. But Dr. Peter, seeing companies like yours and innovators such as yourself and inventors such as yourself inventing devices and bringing them to market that actually do things to make ourselves and the areas around us so much safer, so much healthier, that is that exciting next wave. And I'm really excited to see those innovations. But it also begs the question, and I'm sure a lot of listeners want me to ask you this, is how are you doing all of these things? You are still actively a surgeon. You are in your clinic days. You're an inventor. You're an author. You're a professor. I know that you speak on stages all across the world. So you've got to take us behind the scenes into the life of Dr. Peter. How are you managing all of this time?
Well, I don't know. I don't know that I do anything different than anyone else. I'm committed to improving the quality of medical care. And I believe as a physician, which is my avocation, I'm first and foremost a physician, that my job is not just to practice medicine, but to improve the quality of medicine. So as I'm looking every day, I listen to patients, I look at problems, and I try to find solutions to those problems that I see. So to me, it's very, very important that each day I don't look at what I've done well. I look at what hasn't gone well. What is the problem, and can I come up with solutions? And I look at that both internally at myself. I look at my family. I have 6 kids, a wife. We do a lot of traveling. We do a lot of work together, and I look at the problems that we experience, and I always try to come up with solutions because my job is not just to practice, to improve. The second is that education. I learned. I trained at the University of Chicago when I went to college undergrad, and I learned one important thing: that's to learn to teach yourself. That education doesn't stop when you leave school, when you leave residency. That education is continuous. So I enjoy reading and studying, some through myself, some through my children. So it's a constant level of curiosity, education, reading, identifying problems, and then coming up with solutions. And that's what I enjoy. If I wake up at 3 a.m, I don't go watch movies or do something. I get up and say, hey, what's the problem? What can I look at? Let's try to come up with solutions. And so for me, it's a constant evolution. It's a constant challenge to say, how can I do things better? Whether it's through surgery, medicine, taking care of patients, or whether it's things that I find in the environment and industry that are problematic and I'd like to work on. And the first thing I do is identify them, I codify them, which means put them on paper. I bring them to my team, my research engineers, and say, hey, let's look at this, design, develop. If we see a problem that needs a solution, we try to come up with what we call the least common denominator, and we try to find the simplest, fastest, easiest solutions, and we try to bring these to market if they're important, and license and sell them to companies that do the marketing, sales, distribution. This UVCeed, the technology I work as the first now that we've actually marketed and sold and designed ourselves because we've subcontracted most of our technologies out. But to me, it's important because it's critical to improve the quality of our lives and those around us. And so I look at life and every day as I live as a way to try and look at new problems and try to come up with new solutions, whether it's personal, professional, or looking out in industry. To me, that's a key feature about living life. You have to improve the quality of your life for yourself and others around you, and that requires time, effort, money. But if you put these things together, that's where life becomes exciting, I think.
Yeah, so well said. I love the way you articulate that. And while we've got you here on the air, it's something that pops up in every single conversation in entrepreneurial circles these days. And you also have a really unique view into the medical world as well. And that is AI. How is AI, whether we're talking about the tech innovations, whether we're talking about patient care, all the ways that you see this pop up in your universe, how is AI impacting things here in the beginning of 2026?
Well, AI is exciting because it allows you in many ways to fine tune your quality of care. You can look and draw up on some of these programs to try to look for common issues, synergies, and common pathways to look for solutions. It also allows you to encompass research and bring that together very quickly so that you can look at a problem, understand what's been done, and then draw solutions or conclusions about how I can take this forward. So, for example, for diagnostic perspectives, I look at an X-ray. I have my vision of it, but we can sit there now with diagnostics and AI start to enhance the ability to detect smaller and more refined issues on diagnostic tests, MRIs, X-rays, CTs. Next is how we can take common testing systems and look at these and say, hey, my blood glucose is this. Where does it path? How does it relate to me, my lifestyle, my food intake, my daily diurnal intake up and down during daytime, nighttime activity, sports, resting, and how I can optimize certain treatments by looking at these from both a diagnostic perspective and a therapeutic perspective. So I would argue that, very quickly, it gives us an ability to look at research, to look at technologies that have been done and be able to access them for your own learning. The second is from physicians and healthcare providers, way to personalize or optimize the quality of care for individuals rather than using generalized graphs that are for the average 70 kilogram male, that this is how you dose a pharmaceutical or this is how you would treat someone, without looking at the specifics. So in this personalized medicine space, which is where we need to head to need to go in medicine to optimize the quality of care, you need to sit there, and AI gives us the chance to individualize quality of care. Now, there is one major drawback, and this is something that I've always been concerned about, is that if the data that is put into the AI algorithms is inaccurate, you will end up with inaccurate solutions. And we have found that consistently in medicine, is that people have written papers, publications, technologies, and espoused certain treatments based on fraudulent or questionable research. And people can build huge amounts of data. If the core research that it's built on is questionable, your conclusions are problematic. And we've seen that throughout medicine. Let's just use a simple example like margarine. You can remember years ago when the American Heart Association used to say, oh, don't use butter, use margarines, it's safer, better. Now we realize all these chemicals that are in many of these synthetic butter substitutes are actually problematic, and it's safer just to control the dose, use less butter, but use this in a more effective fashion, as Mediterranean diets do, as an example. These are things that I see across medicine. Maybe that's a primitive example, but across medicine, we see quite a bit of basic or core research that has not been done properly or has a particular bias, or maybe individuals had financial gains to publish something and people build research upon suspect data. So that's the one thing you have to be careful about AI, is you can't just assume the conclusions that are derived from AI are accurate without knowing the base data that's gone in, and has the base data been checked, counter-checked, so that the conclusions or the data that's coming out is truly accurate. So on one hand, I see it as a huge game changer for diagnostics, therapies, treatments, for personalized medicine. On the second, I see a risk of big danger if we're bringing data that may not be accurate, and we're building conclusions on equivocal data. There's going to be challenges there. And how we're going to develop systems to double and cross-check the original data, and having access to the original data, is going to be critical. And that, so far, is where my biggest challenges are with AIs, because you have no way to check the source data. All you have is what they bring up and their conclusions without doing this. We're looking at what I would like to call the next generation of AI, where we're looking at visual data, much like your brain works. Most AI is based on written data, on documentation that's done verbally and in writing. And I think the next generation of AI is going to change, where a lot of this we're going to look at is how our brain processes it through visual, through auditory, through motion, and those type of data that we're going to see, I think, in the future are going to be very interesting as well. So I see that as maybe the next generation. But moving back, AI, huge opportunity, but be aware that there are risks with it as well. And I think if you understand the risks, then you can sit there and optimize the value of the AI data that you receive. Okay.
Yeah, so well said. And that's what gets me really excited. Hearing your perspective on it in the medical world, it really ties in, I think, that entrepreneurs are pushing the envelope and innovating in really different ways. Look at Tesla Vision. Elon Musk has been very intentional with regards to Tesla vehicles, saying we're not going to put sensors in there because the human driver makes decisions merely with their eyes and with their brain. And so we're going to equip cars with eyes, cameras, and the brain of the AI chip that's on board. And that's the way that it's moving. And it's really cool to see that in real time, it's making decisions the way that we make decisions. So super grateful that you are one of those innovators in such a high stakes environment that is making all of these things work in a way that is good for the patients, good for us as the end consumers. And I've got to put you on the spot one last time here in the middle of your clinical day. I always ask this question at the end of every episode, and that is, with your entrepreneurial hat on, what is your best piece of advice for listeners? Knowing that we're being listened to by both wantrepreneurs and entrepreneurs at all different stages of their own growth journeys, and knowing that there's an amazing 12 months ahead of us with regards to opportunities. As a fellow entrepreneur yourself, what's that one piece of advice that you want to leave them with today?
I think that we can always make life, people, our environments around us better. I would challenge you to critically challenge data that is presented to you, and that always realize that just because the status quo exists does not mean that it's optimal, that we can always improve things around us. And the challenge with this is to identify an issue and be willing to spend your time, your money, your effort to improve the quality, and looking at it from what people care about, what people need. Because ultimately, the consumer is the individuals, the people around you in society. Look and see that we owe ourselves the responsibility to enhance the lives of those around us. And that can be done as an entrepreneur by looking at problems that we see, coming up with solutions, and iteratively change those to improve the quality of life around us. And I think that is something that's more important, I think, than anything else, at least in medicine, if not just in the world in general, is not just to live your life, but to try to improve the quality of your life. And that can be done through innovation, entrepreneurship, and some of that's just in speaking and talking to people. But I think more importantly is develop technologies that add value, because as we improve our quality of life, we'll improve it for everyone around us.
Oh, I love that advice. And that is a universal truth, which it's hard to find those in today's world, but I'm super grateful for you sharing those words of wisdom with our worldwide audience. Listeners, you heard it from Dr. Peter himself. This is someone who's pushing the envelope. He's an innovator in so many different ways. And you heard how frequently the patient, the people that he serves, that is at the heart of his mission across all of these ventures that he's involved in. So listeners, definitely check the show notes. We're dropping a link directly to UVCeed, because hearing us talk about it on the air, that's cool, but actually seeing it in action, how it locks onto the back of your iPhone, how it works in your spaces, wherever it is that you go, I think you'll be surprised. It's a way smaller device than you're probably envisioning. So definitely check out the link to UVCeed down below. We're also including all of Dr. Peter's relevant links wherever it is that you're tuning into today's episode. So Peter, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks. Appreciate your time.